Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. It's Sunday, July 26, 2020. And I thought this morning for our class and discussion, we'll read from some Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I know we've sometimes had the practice on Sundays to read Chaitanya Charitamrita in different temples I'm familiar with over the decades, either Chaitanya Charitamrita or a lecture from Prabhupada. Sometimes Sunday morning would be something different, and we haven't been real regular with that. But I have this volume here. You can see on the cover of this volume, there's Sanatan Goswami offering obeisances with a straw between his teeth to Lord Chaitanya. And so we'll read something from the conversations, the teachings between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatan Goswami. I'm here at Madhya Leela, chapter 22, entitled The Process of Devotional Service. Maybe we'll read a few verses. Let's start at text 104. Text 104. In hearing Dominique's class yesterday, I was inspired by this section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So text 104, Madhya Leela, chapter 22. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svaya Mupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tuyubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Sangha Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodipal Gaurodaya Pushpavantal Chitral Sandal Tamo Nudal. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, who are just like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance in this age of Kali and to wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Svarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Jayatam Suratal Pangur Mamamanda Mater Gati Mat Sarvasva Padambojal Radhamadana Mohanao. Glory to the all-merciful Radha and Madan Mohan. I am lame and ill-advised, yet they are my directors, and their lotus feet are everything to me. Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratnagara Simhasanastal Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Deval Prestalibi Sevyamanao Smarami. In a temple of jewels in Vrindavan, underneath the desire tree, Sri Sri Radha and Govinda, served by their most confidential associates, sit upon an effulgent throne. I offer my humble obeisances unto them. Shriman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karshan Venu Staner Gopir Gopinata Shriyestuna. Sri Srila Gopinath, who is the originator of the transcendental mellow of the rasa dance, stands on the shore at Vamsivat and attracts all of the cowherd damsels of Vraja with the sound of his celebrated flute. May they all confer their benediction upon us. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 22, entitled The Process of Devotional Service. We'll read a few verses. We're starting with text 104. 104. So this is Lord Chaitanya speaking philosophy to Sanatan Goswami. So we can say there's maybe 5 major philosophical conversations in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and one is Lord Chaitanya with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and another is with Lord Chaitanya with Prakashananda Sarasvati and his 60,000 sannyas disciples. Another is Lord Chaitanya speaking with Ramananda Roy, and in that one, Lord Chaitanya takes the role of student. Another, in chapter 19 of Madhya Lila, is Lord Chaitanya's discussions with Srila Rupa Goswami. And the 5th and most extensive is these several chapters, like 5 chapters here at the end of the Madhya Lila, Lord Chaitanya speaking with Sanatan Goswami. These are the most extensive, intensive, intricate philosophical discussions. And so just some very brief history. So Sanatan Goswami, he's on our altar. He's really the eldest and the chief of the 6 Goswamis. So it's good and natural, serving in the line of Srila Prabhupada, in the line of the Goswamis, to get to know these personalities, their lives, their teachings, their relationship with each other and with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Sanatan Goswami, as most or all of you may be familiar, he was practically the prime minister of the kingdom under Nawab Hussain Shah, and And there's many pastimes with Sanatan Goswami and Lord Chaitanya and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then at one point, Sanatan Goswami, he just became exhausted with material life. And again, he was like very wealthy and very famous, very powerful, and just he had everything. So then when he approaches Lord Chaitanya, and that picture is here on the cover of this particular volume, he approaches Lord Chaitanya with a straw between his teeth, meaning he's a living embodiment of that verse. Trinada pisuni china terori valsahishnuna amani namanadena kirtanya sadahari. That one should be more tolerant than a tree and see oneself as lower than a blade of grass. So that's the idea. He's seeing himself as lower than the straw on the street, wanting no respect for himself, ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, Kirtanya Sadahari, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. And so Sanatan Goswami, he approaches Lord Chaitanya. He says, Kayami Kanimaya and Jare Tapatraya. He says, people think I'm really great. He says, people think I'm like, I'm really this special, wonderful personality. And Sanatan Goswami says, I'm such a fool that I believe them. I'm such a fool with so much ego that I believe them. And he says, but the fact is, I don't even know who I am. I'm suffering. I don't even know why I'm suffering. I don't even know who I am. So in this condition, please instruct me. Just like Arjuna at some point realized, like Arjuna had, well, I have this point of view, and then in verse 7 of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, Shishastaham Sarimam Tram Prapanam. He says, yes, I'm confused due to miserly weakness. In this condition, I ask you, please instruct me. Now I am a disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. And so it's very similar. So Sanatan Goswami goes, yeah, he says, I'm so puffed up. I even believe these people who think that I'm this very amazing personality, but actually I don't even know who I am. So then that begins become several chapters. They were there for many weeks, a month or 3 months. There at Prayag, at Lord Chaitanya and Sanatan Goswami. So we're well into the instructions here. We're practically 3 chapters into it. But again, in Dominique's class yesterday, she mentioned one verse that is in this section. So we'll get to it soon. So text 104 reads, Ebe sadhana bhakti lakshana shuna sanatana yaha hoite pai Krishna prema mahadana. My dear Sanatan, please now hear about the regulative principles for the execution of devotional service. By this process, one can attain the highest perfection of love of Godhead, which is the most desirable treasure. Okay, so in that verse, we can see that the 2 words, the terms sadhana bhakti, ebe sadhana bhakti, and lakshana means symptoms. Lakshana means symptoms. So Lord Chaitanya is talking about sadhana bhakti, and then later in the verse, the second line, Yahweh te pai Krishna prema mahadana. Krishna prema mahadana, the most valuable treasure of love for Krishna. So sadhana bhakti is the process, the activity, or the abhideya, and then the fruit, the prayojana or the prema, the most desirable treasure. Okay. So, my dear, also I'll read that verse again. My dear Sanatan, please now hear about the regulative principles for the execution of devotional service. By this process, one can attain the highest perfection of love of Godhead, which is the most desirable treasure. Text 105 which is a verse found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.2. Verse 105 reads, Kriti Sajya Bhavet Sajya Bhavasa Sadhana Bita Nitya Siddhasya Bhavasya Prakatyam Ridi Sadyata. So we see that word sadhya quite a bit there, all many times. Okay, so the translation: when transcendental devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or the regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service in practice. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is text 105 of Madhya Lila Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 22. Chapter 22, text 105, purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse is found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.2. Because living entities are minute, atomic parts and parcels of the Lord, devotional service is already present within them in a dormant condition. Devotional service begins with Shravana Kirtan, hearing and chanting. When a man is sleeping, he can be awakened by sound vibration. Therefore, every conditioned soul should be given the chance to hear the Hare Krishna mantra chanted by a pure Vaishnav. One who hears the Hare Krishna mantra thus vibrated is awakened to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In this way, one's mind gradually becomes purified, as stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaito Darpana Marjanam. When the mind is purified, the senses are also purified. Instead of using the senses for sense gratification, the awakened devotee employs the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the process by which dormant love for Krishna is awakened. Okay. Hare Krishna. Haribo. So, actually, I had some correspondence fairly recently with someone, and we were talking about processes for spiritual life. And I described about my endeavors to practice bhakti yoga for about 40 years now. And then this person, he said, oh, my process is more self-directed. My process is more self-directed, rather than external. So I didn't respond to that yet, but I'm responding to it now. And I expect I will write a response letter pretty soon. So, well, actually, two verses from now, text 107. This is the verse that Dominique quoted in her class yesterday. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajika Bunoy Shravanadi Shuddhachitte Karye Udai. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, the living entity naturally awakens. So, okay, so we're not matter, we're not this body. We are that irreducible quanta of consciousness that inhabits the body. We're that spiritual spark, that atomic unit of sentience. Sentience means personalism, means we have senses. We have spiritual senses. And the spiritual body is like covered. It's covered, the diamond is covered. Just like our body has our clothes have a particular shape. Why? Because our body has a shape. okay? And we might put on different layers of clothes, but ultimately they're all covering the body, and the layers of clothes have a shape because the body has a shape. So similarly, the body has a shape because the soul has a shape. The body has eyes and nose and hands and legs because the soul has the spiritual origin of all of those active and knowledge acquiring senses. So we're spirit, we're spirit soul. We're not this body. We're eternal spirit soul, Satchidananda Vigraha, eternally full of bliss and knowledge. And to the extent that we identify with matter, then we're fearful. We're fearful because we think we're going to die. We think we're going to die, and that's a fearful condition. And that's miserable, suffering, ignorant. It's the opposite of Satchidananda, eternally full of bliss and knowledge, which is our actual nature. And so, okay, and then we can understand from some basic logic that, yeah, that I didn't create all of this. I mean, I attracted it. I attracted to be in this material body, but there's so much structure, organization that, there's like a higher intelligence. Intelligence means a person, okay? And so what's in Sanskrit, sambandha, the basic ontology is that we are spirit soul, and our nature is to serve the supreme spiritual being with love and devotion. If anyone has a better, more rational idea about what is reality and who are we and what's our natural function, I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it. If anyone has a better idea, I haven't heard it. I'm open to hear it. So, so we're spirit soul, and so, and then there's supreme spirit soul and our nature. Jivera Srupa Hori Krishnera Nichidas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beta Prakash, that we are eternal servants of Krishna. If someone sees Krishna, if someone misperceives Krishna as a sectarian name, then we're servants of God. We're servants of God. Okay, so or Allah, Adonai, Krishna. There's one God, many names. So Jivera Supori Krishna Nichidana. So we're eternal spirit souls, and our nature is to serve the supreme soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, with love and devotion. That's it. That's simple. Okay? That's simple. So that's the sambandha, that's the basic relationship. And then abhideya, the activity is devotional service, sadhana bhakti, and then the fruits are that love of God. So that's like the goal of existence. That's the function and goal of existence. Okay. And yes, so this verse from Rupa Goswami, when transcendental devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or the regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service in practice. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, because living entities are minute atomic parts and parcels of the Lord, devotional service is already present within them in a dormant condition. So I mentioned my correspondence with a fellow who said, I have a more self-directed process. So the actual fact is, nothing can be more self-directed than bhakti yoga. It's coming from the deepest essence and quality of who we are. Nothing can be more self-directed than bhakti yoga. Our Nityasiddha Krishna Prema. Love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. Shravanadi Shuddhachite Karya Udai. and by hearing and chanting the name, pastime, about the name, pastime, form, relationship of Krishna and his representatives, then that natural love of Krishna, which is within the heart of all living entities, naturally awakens. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, the living entity naturally awakens. And so, so nothing can be more self-directed than bhakti yoga. It's coming from the core of our being, from the heart of our heart. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena shanta sadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya gunasvarupam Govinda madi purusham tamaham bhajami. Lord Brahma says, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shama Sundar, Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes, and whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eyes of devotion tinged with pure love of God. So that bhakti, that's in our heart of hearts. And so as far as the externals, yes, under guidance of spiritual masters, under the guidance of acharyas like Lord Chaitanya and Sanatana Goswami and our current link spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, that anukulyana Krishnanu anukulyana sankalpa patikulyana varjanam, that we accept external practices that support us to connect with, a term we're using coaching and coach training a lot, to help us connect with that highest guidance within, with that love of God that is within our hearts. That's what the external practices are about. That's what the external processes. It's the quintessence of be, do, have. That living from our core, that love of God, and then we do things that lovers of Krishna do, like chant Hare Krishna and discuss the pastimes of Sanatana Goswami and Lord Chaitanya, and then we have the fruits of deepened love and enthusiasm, and then we experience that awakening from the core of our hearts, that awakening of love of Krishna even more fully. Now, so this is the quintessence of living from being, of being self-directed, from the very self of the self, the super self. Now, some maybe were here and we're saying, oh, well, I'm not feeling that love of God that's driving me. I'm not feeling that love of Krishna. All right. And then, actually, Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada, as these verses go on, they discuss that. And so, yes, so in our conditioned stage, where the diamond self is covered, in the conditioned stage, so we say in Bhakti, it's true. In Bhakti Yoga, the journey is the goal. The journey is the goal, because the goal is to serve Krishna. So what's the journey to get there? To serve Krishna by attending Mangalarti and putting our mind and hearts in these verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita. The journey is the goal. And then as the aspiring devotee advances in cleansing the heart from unwanted things, as the aspiring devotee advances towards prema, towards love of Krishna, then the journey is the goal is even more true. It's even more true. In stages of sadhana bhakti, in the stage of clearing anartas, then there's still the sense of, well, I'm doing this sadhana so I can come to the point, and like that. So still the journey is the goal. And then for devotees like Sanatana Goswami and these pure devotees, then the sadhana itself is fully imbued with the goal of the prayojana, the prema bhakti. And then of course, so then there's still progress, we might say, but the progress isn't about clearing toxic unwanted things. The process is about deepening and expanding love for Krishna millions of times at every moment. It is said, like the gopis, their love for Krishna is expanding and deepening and being enriched millions of times at every moment. So there's that eternal process, but the pure devotees, their process is not about clearing material lust, greed, envy, ignorance, like that. We spoke a few things there. I'd like before we go to discussion to maybe read a few more verses and hear from Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. Okay, text 106. Shravanadi Kriyatara Svarupa Lakshana Tatasta Lakshane Upajaya Prema Dana. The spiritual activities of hearing, chanting, remembering, and so forth are the natural characteristics of devotional service. The marginal characteristic is that it awakens pure love for Krishna. In the next verse, text 107, this is the verse often quoted by Srila Prabhupada. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sacha Kabunai Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kariye Udai. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, the living entity naturally awakens. So again, nothing can be more self-directed than this process of bhakti. And it's just like, an example given by Prabhupada, an example we like to use a lot. That like the rules of the road, So just like if I have a goal to get from Gainesville to Atlanta, I have some goal. So it's not that like, these rules of the road, drive on the right side, stop at a red light. These rules of the road are so stifling. They're so external. No, I've got my goal. And I'm very glad and enthusiastic to follow the rules of the road, and I'm glad that others follow the rules of the road. The rules of the road, they are not repressive, they are not oppressive, they free me to attain my goal. So this goal is that pure love of God, that's natural for the soul. And so the rules of the road, the rules of sadhana bhakti, they're there to support us to clear, the term anartha, to support us to clear anything that's in the way, any roadblocks, any obstacles that's in the way from the natural pure awakening of the soul in that spiritual personality, in that love of God. So sadhana bhakti, it's not about repression or suppression or stifling. This is about the soul awakening. And it's about, let's say, so in the sadhana bhakti stage where there's not that pure love of God, it's be, do, have. It's be, do, have. It might not be like, okay, I'm full of love for Krishna, so I serve Krishna. So, well, I'm not feeling that. But it's like, I am intelligent, determined, disciplined. Intelligent means, look, I'm going for enduring eternal fulfillment. And unintelligent, spiritually, means that I'm settling for temporary gratifications. So, I'm intelligent, disciplined, and enthusiastic in this process. Rupa Goswami says, Utsaha nishchaya tata karma pravartana. Sango tagat sato everyday. Sadvi bhakti prasidati. So he says qualities, states of being that are essential for progressing on this path of awakening or pure love of God. The first one he mentions is enthusiasm, which Srila Prabhupada defines as endeavor executed with intelligence. So enthusiasm does not need to look like rah-rah, getting hyped up. It could look that way. But endeavor executed with intelligence. So it's, yeah, like I'm enthusiastic. Another quality is patience. Patience, confidence in the process, patience. And so, I'm doing things that spiritually intelligent, enthusiastic, disciplined people do. People do. It means like, yeah, I'm willing to forego immediate gratifications. Because when we say nothing can be more self-directed than bhakti, that's true. And in fact, anything else, by definition, is not self-directed. Means it's not directed from the core of our being. Any other process, and bhakti, I mean, it could be bhakti in the line of Jesus. It could be bhakti in the line of Buddha. It could be bhakti in the line. So it doesn't. So bhakti, it's the universal. It's the universal state of being of the soul in enlightenment. So this is universal. This is not sectarian. So, and anything else is not self-directed, because anything else means it's directed by a false conception of who I am, ahankara. It's directed by it's directed by the materially conditioned mind, or it's directed by the senses going wild, right? In some circles, spirituality means let the senses go wild. That's what it means to be spiritual. And then Prabhupada makes the point. It's kind of like because Prabhupada will say, like, because one can't control the senses, so they go, oh yeah, so that's actually the goal of life, to let the senses just go wild. That's actually the goal, because I'm a slave to them. So let's just make that something very wonderful. So anything else that's not driven by and moving towards that natural awakening of love of God in the soul, anything else is directed by something that's not the self, by some illusory conception of the self. Text 108 reads, Eta sadhana bhakti duita prakar ekavaidi bhakti raganuga bhakti ara. There are two processes of practical devotional service. One is regulative devotional service, and the other is spontaneous devotional service. We can see those terms in the verse. Sadhana bhakti, Vaidhi bhakti, Raganuga bhakti. So Lord Chaitanya, he's giving some nuanced instruction to Sanatan Goswami about this process. Text 109. Ragahina jana bhaje shastra ragyai Vaidhi bhakti balitare sarva shastra gai. Translation. Those who have not attained the platform of spontaneous attachment in devotional service render devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master according to the regulative principles mentioned in the revealed scriptures. According to the revealed scriptures, this kind of devotional service is called Vaidhi Bhakti. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the beginning, one has to hear from a bona fide spiritual master. This is favorable for advancing in devotional service. According to this process, one hears, chants, remembers, and engages in deity worship, acting under the directions of the spiritual master. These are the essential primary activities of devotional service. Devotional service must not be executed for some material purpose. One should not even have a desire to merge into the absolute truth. One has to render such service out of love only. Ahetuki apratiyata. Devotional service must be without ulterior motives. Then material conditions cannot check it. Okay, I'll say that again. Devotional service must be without ulterior motives. Then material conditions cannot check it. I appreciate this because Prabhupada's quoting text 6 of chapter 2 of Canto 1 of Bhagavatam. Svayapum samparodamo yato bhaktira tokshije ahetuki pratita yatma suprasidati. That the supreme dharma for all living entities is to serve the transcendent Lord, Sri Krishna, Vasudeva. Such service must be uninterrupted and unmotivated in order to completely satisfy the self. We quote that verse usually towards related to a particular process towards the end of the Sappho Foundational Seminar. We quote it in other contexts too. And the way we quote it, and the purposes for which we quote it, I believe are very nicely described in this sentence from Srila Prabhupada, where he describes those two words. Hetu means reason. So ahetuki means no reason. And apratiyata, uninterrupted. So Prabhupada says, devotional service must be without ulterior motives. Then material conditions cannot check it. Meaning, when all I want is to serve Krishna. All I want is devotional service. All I want is to serve Prabhupada's mission. And that's the bliss of the soul. When that's all we want, nothing material can get in the way. Nothing material can get in the way. Ahetuki pratiyata. Now, we had some discussion last night. We had an evening program with Malini Ramachandra, Bhakti Brielle, and we're talking about clear intention. And that's when we quote, this is the clear intention verse, 1, 2, 6 of Bhagavatam. This is a verse we cite so much related to clear intention. And so it means that when our intention is clear on the spiritual platform, and actually true consciousness in the result, true clear intention can only exist on that sattvic or even transcendental platform. Because that's what it means for the soul to be clear. I'm clear. I'm dedicating myself to awakening my natural bhakti, that natural love of God within the heart. Anything else, we're not clear. And so when our intention's clear, nothing material can get in the way. Of course, spiritual, Krishna can give whatever results he wants. And then the devotee's always in that enthusiastic, childlike spirit of wonder and discovery. However the results come out, always enthusiastic to continue to serve. Nothing material can get in the way. That is freedom from anxiety. That is freedom from anxiety. Gradually, one can rise to the platform of spontaneous devotion. Gradually, one can rise to the platform of spontaneous loving service. A child is sent to school by force to receive an education, but when he gets a little taste of education at an advanced stage, he automatically participates and becomes a learned scholar. One cannot force a person to become a scholar, but sometimes force is used in the beginning. A child is forced to go to school and read and write according to the instructions of his teachers. Prabhupada sometimes talks about his childhood. His mother hired someone to tie him up and drag him to school. So Prabhupada is not speaking just theoretically here, that Prabhupada, he would have temper tantrums, he didn't want to go to school. And I said his mother, because that's what his father was kind of lenient, like, oh, let the boy do what he wants. But his mother was more stern. So they hired someone who put a rope around him and dragged him to school. True story. Okay. So, a child is forced to go to school and read and write according to the instructions of his teachers. Such is the difference between Vaidhi Bhakti and spontaneous Bhakti. Dormant love for Krishna exists in everyone's heart, and it simply has to be awakened by the regulative process of devotional service. One has to learn to use a typewriter by following the regulative principles of the typing book. So many analogies here Prabhupada's giving. One has to place his fingers on the keys in such a way and practice. But when one becomes adept, he can type swiftly and correctly without even looking at the keys. Similarly, one has to follow the rules and regulations of devotional service as they are set down by the spiritual master. Then one can come to the point of spontaneous loving service. This love is already there within the heart of everyone. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. Spontaneous service is not artificial. One simply has to come to that platform by rendering devotional service according to the regulative principles. Thus, one has to practice hearing and chanting and follow the other regulative principles by washing the temple, cleansing oneself, rising early in the morning, attending Mangalarti, and so on. If one does not come to the platform of spontaneous service in the beginning, he must adopt regulative service according to the instructions of the spiritual master. This regulative service is called Vaidhi Bhakti. So the second to last sentence, Prabhupada says, if one does not come to the platform of spontaneous service in the beginning, so he's asking us to imagine the scenario where we start practicing, but we don't quickly come to spontaneous service. Hard to imagine, I know, yeah. But you need to just kind of like try to put your mind there, like try to empathize with someone who it just didn't happen like the first day. It's strange, but okay. So if one does not come to the platform of spontaneous service in the beginning, he must adopt regulative service according to the instructions of the spiritual master. And that's how we advance. That's how we progress. It's not a cheap process. It's a real process. And of course, yeah, in one sense, as aspiring devotees, there is this science. Like yesterday, in Dominique's class, in the discussion we discussed, there's the 9 steps, 9 stages, and like that. Same time, we don't want to get too absorbed in like advancement, because then that can become another ego thing, and we're like, oh, she's not advanced at all. Oh, he's only on that stage, and like it can become a material upadi. So at the same time, there is a very exact, rigorous science, which is, again, like it's for me, this from the first time I started reading Prabhupada's books, not that I was following anything, but I was impressed. Like, this is a real science. Like this is a real science. It's not just, oh, spiritual, like that. So like a aspiring devotee, like we're encouraged to meditate not so much on how advanced I am, or I'm not advanced, or just to meditate on service. How can I serve? Okay, on my service? It's 4:35 a.m. My service is come to Mangalarti. My service is chant japa. My service is to share about Srila Prabhupada's teachings. My service is to raise my children in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, what's my service? Not really being distracted by advancement. And then, of course, the irony is we're focused on how can I serve steadily, moment to moment, and that's how the spirit soul advances towards that inner awakening of love of Krishna, towards that direction. I think I'll read one more verse, and then I'd be glad to hear from you. This next verse, it's Lord Chaitanya quoting a well-known verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the second canto, first chapter, text 5. It's a well-known verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Chaitanya is quoting in his teachings to Sanatana Goswami. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Harir Ishvara Chotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyas Chechatabayam. O descendant of Bharat, O Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma, who is the supreme controller and who always removes the miseries of living entities, must always be heard about from reliable sources, and he must be glorified and remembered by one who wishes to become fearless. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 5. It is one's duty to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the hearing process. This is called Shrotavya. If one has heard properly about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his duty is to glorify the Lord and preach his glories. This is called Kirtitavya. So one thing that stands out for me, by hearing, by beginning to hear, Prabhupada saying, we have a responsibility, we have a duty. If we're hearing, we're doing Shravanam, we have a duty to do Kirtan. And Kirtan can mean with mridanga and kartals. Kirtan can mean sharing, it can mean talking, mean giving a lecture, it can mean in a casual conversation, but we have a responsibility. We've come to Lord Chaitanya's movement, we have a responsibility to represent these teachings. This is called Kirtitavya. When one hears about the Lord and glorifies him, it is natural to think of him. This is called Smartavya. All this must be carried out if one actually wants to be immune from fear. Wow, interesting that Prabhupada goes there in the last line of his purport. Bayam dvitiyana viniveshatasyat. So this devotional service, this bhakti yoga, these are the activities of the soul free from the material body. And so while in the body, we get to do what we do eternally, and then we're free from fear and anxiety. Because then what we're doing, the source of our bliss, our happiness, what we're doing can never be crushed by time. It can never be interfered with. Anything other than devotional service to the Lord, then that will be ended by time, either a minute from now, a year from now, 100,000 years from now. And the soul, being eternal, knows that I'm only going to be satisfied with eternal pleasure, eternal bliss. And this temporary external gratification has a beginning and an end. So this is going to be destroyed. So that's a source of death and anxiety. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening to some Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I welcome at this time if anyone would like to share any comments or ask any questions.
Jesus.
Dhira, did you want to share something?
Yeah. Just wanted to ask, when is the initiation ceremony?
Okay. So the initiation is 4 weeks from today, August 23rd.
Oh.
Okay. And, so we've made, it's been scheduled then for about like 14 or 15 months ago, we scheduled it, and it's still scheduled and it's happening. But, because of pandemic concerns, we're really, as far as in person, we're only going to have those who kind of need to be there for the ceremony, and we're gonna make it available online. And in fact, real soon, maybe today or in the next few days, I'm going to send an announcement. It's going to be available online on this Zoom number. So it's 4 Sundays from today. And originally, the initiation ceremony was scheduled for like 11 a.m., late morning into the afternoon. But because we're going to do it outdoors again, because we think our understanding is that outdoors is a little safer considering the pandemic stuff. So we're going to do it outdoors, and so to hopefully get some cooler weather, we're going to start at 6:30 a.m. for 4 weeks from now. And we will make it available online, and we're also planning to video it. Thanks for your question.
I guess the only follow-up is, unless some amazing thing happens with the finding of a cure for the virus, there's no way that's going to change where everyone's going to be involved. Unless some amazing thing happens, well, then you could do when everybody comes, but that's very unlikely, right?
Yeah, if I understood what you said, yeah, I mean, right, unless some really unpredictable, miraculous thing happens and there's like apparently no danger from the virus, then we could open it up to in person. But that's our plan is to have it available online, and only those who are required to be there in person. It'll be at the home temple of Nalini Kanta and Ratneshvari Prabhus.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Govinda, thank you for the class. Thank you for choosing that part from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's a part that's very dear to me. And there's so many nuances in what you express, in what Lord Chaitanya expressed, and I'm not going to go into them now or here. But one part that I found interesting is to think of the idea of advancement, the end of your class. And on one hand, yeah, if I'm just focusing on my advancement, I want to be advanced, I want to advance, it seems self-absorbed and probably more coming from false egos than really spiritual desire. And at the same time, there is a responsibility to be advanced in devotional service. There is a responsibility to serve, for example, the Maha Mantra in a better way by being attentive to the Maha Mantra. There is a responsibility to treat the devotees in a better way, which will lead us to take all the anatta from our heart and all the unwanted things, to be responsible to take them out. And it seems that the motivation to do that is not my advancement, but service. So it's like really there's so many nuances here.
Yeah, thanks for that distinction. Yes, yeah, right. Thanks for, I like the way you explained it. Of course, the sincere devotee does want to advance, so then I can render service more without getting distracted by all my nonsense. I wish I could advance and serve Prabhupada better. And the focus is not an ego thing at this level. This focus is to increase service. Thank you, Malini. Ramachandra?
My question is in regards to the verse before the last you read at the end of the purport with Prabhupada. Like I felt that he emphasized service to the spiritual master.
Yeah.
Like if someone is not able to spontaneously render devotional service, right, something like that, he should just serve the spiritual master.
Where are you looking?
The verse before the last one.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of the.
In the beginning? Oh, at the end?
End of the purport.
Okay.
Spontaneous service is not. If one does not come to the platform of spontaneous service in the beginning, he must conduct regulative service according to the instruction of the spiritual master. And I'm wondering, I think since Dhira Prabhu put forward the initiations, and a question that came to my mind, like an old question that I was thinking about is, as opposed to like following, let's say, regulative principles and serving the spiritual master, what is more essential for the initiation? Like we know that the initiates, like they Prabhupada gave like a certain slot of time, like 6 months, 3 months, or something like that. And he also emphasized service. So what is actually solidifies this connection in the time of initiation, or the connection with the spiritual master? Is it the principles, or is it the service, or is it the service with the principles? Or
Okay, thanks for your question. Yeah, what's coming to me in relation to what I understand from your question is there's no distinction. There's no distinction really that that we follow, whether we've been following for 40 years or 4 days, whatever. We follow the regulative principles. Because the way Prabhupada writes it here, he must adopt regulative service according to the instructions of the spiritual master. Regulative service. So basically, we follow regulative principles, whether it's we don't eat meat anymore, and we don't take intoxication, and we chant at least 16 rounds per day, we rise for morning program. We follow that because that's our service. I mean, we might have other motivations depending on our stage, like, well, I just follow it because, like, wow, I was sick with, I was tired of waking up with a hangover, or I just see that I'm happier with this cleaner diet. We might, but at least in principle, we follow the regular principles because that is our service to Srila Prabhupada. That's not our only service. We also might have a service to distribute books, or to hold home programs, or conduct seminars to bring people to chanting Hare Krishna. So yeah, sometimes Prabhupada, in his language, he'll say, yeah, like there's sadhana and then there's practical service. Sometimes Prabhupada uses that language. He'll like sadhana 4 or 5 hours in the morning and an evening program, and then practical service during the day. At the same time, we follow the regular principles because that is our service. And by humbly rendering service, whether it's through following the regular principles, or going out on Harinam Sankirtan, or whatever our service is, by humbly rendering service, then we're open to receive the Divya Gyan, the transcendental, transformational, realized knowledge from Srila Prabhupada, and that's the eternal bond. Thank you.
Hi Krishna, in your response to Amar Chandra, I think you make a distinction, and a distinction that Prabhupada makes between sadhana bhakti and sadhana, and I think there's a distinction there. Because, for example, we I learn Vedanga, and there is hand sadhana. Sadhana is a word that's used in so many ways. It's a word that represents practice. To do some practice, like hand sadhana for Vedanga, or if we play the piano, or if we learn the guitar, or if we learn anything, really, it's a sadhana. And then Prabhupada said, okay, there is a sadhana and devotional service, and then you do your service. But within the regulative principle of sadhana bhakti, that the service itself, deity worship or whatever service, will be part of sadhana bhakti.
Thanks for that distinction, sadhana and sadhana bhakti. Yeah, so we do our sadhana, we do our practice in a spirit of bhakti. Then it's sadhana bhakti.
Yeah, but also where you were saying, like, Prabhupada sometimes he does say, there is your sadhana and there is your service.
Yes.
And he makes those distinctions. And I think what he means by that is that really when it's a practice, like hearing chanting, like the the chanting 16 rounds, Mangalarti and all those things. And the service that the devotee do throughout the day is also sadhana bhakti.
It's also sadhana, yeah.
However, Prabhupada used that word sadhana with different meanings.
Yeah, thanks for that. So like, right. So like if like for 3 hours I'm going to clean the temple, that's sadhana.
That's part of sadhana bhakti.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I used to back in early and mid 90s, there was 4 years where once in a while I would milk a cow morning and evening. Her name was Rukmavati. But I really was experiencing it as part of my sadhana. I was really experiencing it part of my sadhana. So you're saying that one side is to go out and do their occupation in Krishna consciousness. So then that becomes part of their sadhana meditation. It becomes part of their regulative devotional service. So yeah, it's an expanded understanding of sadhana. Sadhana isn't just my 16 rounds and learning a shloka or something like that. I appreciate it.
It's a level of advancement, sadhana bhakti and Daivi bhakti, Daivi sadhana bhakti and Raghunath sadhana bhakti, and it is throughout the day. And in fact, it's interesting because the first verse you read, it seems that there is even nuances, like sadhana bhakti only begins when the senses are awakened.
Yeah.
In the first purport and first verse you read.
Yes.
Sadhana bhakti really, even Daivi bhakti, only starts when the senses are awakened.
Yes, when transcendental.
Before that, it's sadhana, like sadhana with Prema.
Yeah. So that the soul awakens, and then the senses are alive in that love of God. In the senses are bhakti themselves. Thanks for that, Malini.
When I was advertising the workshop that Sattva planning, I was speaking to my friends from Israel, and like usually when you translate workshop, it's actually sadhana.
That's right.
And it's like part of our work.
Thanks for that. בעברית המילה, כן. מצוין. תודה. Daru.
As usual, I'm coming in from left field, but I still thought that there may be somebody who may want to hear the further about the "If You Love Me, Love My Dog." I did some research on it. It was, according to Jeopardy thinks, and many, they think Saint Bernard, not the dog, and not even the guy who the dog was named after, because that was another Saint Bernard, but some Saint Bernard who died in 1100. He quoted it, and it stated that he quoted it as a popular proverb, so even he didn't make it up. So I don't know who made it up, but it is, that's all I got to add to it. So that's all.
Thank you, Daru. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.